no one wants to deploy the sensors and the data. It's a chicken egg problem. So these guys are really good at work with crucial connection. Just taking off from where Sriram was coming from, what those guys are doing is ambient monitoring. We are trying to do something called emissions monitoring. So these are, I have a short video of a garbage pile being burned. So fugitive emissions are things that happen on the order of about 10 or 15 minute time scales. When you take averaging, whilst it's very, very useful, you don't really know what's happened in between. 1 hour, 24 hour, just mask outliers in those time scales that you know nothing about. So one of the things we're trying to figure out is
Come down.
Yeah. So just to kind of contextualize that, just the next slide there. To kind of characterize what emissions monitoring actually means, next slide, please. And we can place that video. Hopefully the video plays, but basically I was just walking through, in fact I was meeting with Harsha, and I found this garbage pile burning. These are essentially fugitive emissions, and if you can play that, you can just try clicking on that, please. Hopefully it plays with time, but basically it shows, you know, with wind, things changing all the time. These are probably 10, 15, 20 minute events. Ambient monitoring, like I said, is very useful in terms of trend lines, but can't really capture too much about the actual emissions event. So anyways, this is essentially a garbage burning event. Move on, Michael, that's okay. So these emission sources can be characterized as, can you move on, Michael? Garbage burning, which is supposed to be illegal, happens all the time. Thermal power plant emissions are huge. Roadway traffic emissions are a huge thing. These all tie into smart cities and construction. My day job is actually construction, so I kind of contribute to pollution a great deal. Construction dust, according to Sarath Buttakunda, is probably India's probably top air quality scientist. He says about 10% of PM pollution is from construction. So essentially, what we're trying to do is, can we take these same optical sensors that Soman is working with and build a device that essentially gives us a 360 view using the same real-time GPS, but essentially we're trying to increase the data accuracy of these sensors, because we don't have 1 hour, 8 hour average, 24 hours to work with. We can't normalize, we can't say compare that to a BAM or say a TOM or whatever. So we have to look at how we can determine the data to be as accurate as possible in the short time scale that we have. So one of the ideas, and again this is not our idea, this is something that this guy called David Hosius is doing his PhD at Berkeley. He was now with the US EPA, super smart guy. He had in a small page 87 of his PhD said, putting 3 sensors of these optical sensors or N sensors on board will lead to data accuracy improvements that could be very beneficial. That was like further work. So we thought, with his approval, we said, can we try and do this here with what we're doing here? Because then it can apply to all kinds of other areas, construction. Of course, the big issue is you can provide all this information to PCB and pollution control board, but enforcement being what enforcement is in India, and kind of the linkages that exist between big business and the PCB might not work as well, but at least we provide the data. So anyways, this is air quality modeling, as you know, is pretty complex, just as with water. There's dispersion, there's all kinds of things. This is from a textbook, an incredible guy called Briggs, 1948, 1949. Around India's independence time, came up with this modeling where if you look at it, there are all kinds of factors involved. That's the example of a thermal power plant. And this idea was also inspired by the citizen advocacy group, which is doing work in Tuticorin and Ennore, where there are about 10 or 11 thermal power plants. The residents there have been at loggerheads with the thermal power plant guys for about, I think, 15 years now. They claim the crops are failing, that lung infections, lung cancer is going up. But CAG's been looking for a way to actually validate the data, try and gather what PM 2.5, PM 10 levels are in the area. So we know that there's a need for it. When we mentioned this device, that said we'd love to deploy it. So we know there's a need for it. And so in any case, imagine, if you will, a thermal power plant right here, the residents in the area over here, in either high-rise buildings or low-rise buildings. And there are all kinds of factors that you'll see that I illustrate in the next slide. You've got atmospheric conditions, you've got topographical factors. All of these air quality modeling systems are highly sophisticated, extremely complex, but they were built in 1978. Built environment was incredibly different. Global warming aside, whether we believe it or not, meteorological factors are different. So these air quality modeling systems are not as good as what they used to be. But that aside, these are all the various input variables that go into these AQMS, the air quality modeling systems. Emission characteristics, stack velocity, plume temperature, stack diameter, terrain topography characteristics, surface roughness, all kinds of things that honestly I don't fully understand. I have to find an air quality expert who can actually work with these modeling systems to give us, to give us what we think is going to be. So supposing you have a plume dispersion here from a stack, say Ashwin right there, we're hoping that through the air quality modeling system we can figure out what, based on the mathematical algorithms that have been developed, what the air quality might be like at his location. Then we place a sensor there, one of our sensors that we're calling the Trident, and then we validate, obviously with actual live data, we validate if the modeling system is providing an accurate value by process of triangulation. Obviously that makes a case more robust. Now I mentioned there are different kinds of air quality modeling systems. There are ones that are monitoring, screening. Spoke to the TNPCB guy the other day, and he was saying your sensors are never going to be monitoring sensors. You're never going to be as good because you're never going to be ISO certified, EME, MIC, all those certifications. Call it a screening. If we can place our sensors and tell these guys where they need to deploy their equipment next, that is a use case that was very exciting. He actually offered us a regulatory sensor, this is talk at this point in time. Perhaps, so he was very excited at the fact that these low quality sensors we're talking about are actually good for screening. It tells us where to deploy our sensors, where to deploy their sensors next. So essentially what we're doing is we're using a gross screening model. Like I said, there are different kinds of models with a lot of mathematical relevance. We're using the gross screening model because they can easy to work with, and they can give us like a back of the page value. And can you just move on? And what we're trying to do essentially is the basic problem. The problem statement is we need to predict the rate of spread of the pollutant cloud and the consequent decrease in mean concentration based on the screening model. Basically, we work with maths equations, obviously the air quality modeling system. We come up with a value based on obviously distances and input parameters, and then we do the machine learning. So essentially, we have to be predictive. If the PCB, pollution control board, has to catch these guys, they have to know when a monitoring event, emissions event is taking place in real time. So what we're hoping to do is essentially, with any machine learning, you've got a training set, and you've got supervised learning, unsupervised learning. With supervised learning, what we do is essentially say that we use our machine learning algorithms to predict, or rather to say that there is an emissions event taking place. The idea is to crowdsource involvement from people who will take a picture, literally. And the beautiful thing, not the beautiful thing, but the thing about particulate matter is you can see it. SOx, NOx, SOFI, you can't. So we're hoping to get people to actually take pictures of the PM emissions event and send us back pictures which allow us GPS, obviously, GPS information, timestamp information. We then validate that emissions event with what our machine learning algorithm provides. That becomes the training data set. Once we have a training data set, the hope is we're then able to predict, or rather based on emissions events without these camera, these photos being sent to us, we can actually tell if there is an emissions event or not. We haven't shown it here, but one simple way to do it is that assume you have a cluster of sensors around here, you have an emissions event here, you'll have heat maps. So basically, because these are real-time values that send values, say every 5 minutes or 1 minute or 10 minutes, you can do heat maps where you can have varying, obviously, color codes. And if in an emissions event, which have been identified earlier, in fact, Rebenefit came up with the idea, our process is going to be get people to submit emissions events in the area. We then place a cluster of sensors in that area, and then use heat maps to kind of figure out if in a cluster of sensors, all of them tend to vary at the same time. That shows an emissions event in the area. And then obviously we go unsupervised after that. So again, our main tech guy was supposed to be here from Manipal. He's got indigestion and exams and couldn't actually be here. But what we're being able to show right now is that using 3 sensors allows us to lower, going back to what Ashwin was saying. So you've got 2 kinds of errors in any kind of thing. You've got systematic errors, so correct me, you've got systematic error and random error. Systematic error is when you have bias already built in, your sensors are not very well biased, you have to get what's called zero bias. And then you've got oscillations in your sensors that are No sensor is going to be steady state. It's always going to be oscillating over a steady state value. Depending on when you actually sample your sensor, you're going to have a different value each time. That's called precision. So bias can be corrected through calibration against these expensive sensors we're talking about. But precision, which is random in nature, is often very, very hard to do. But again, maths tells us, statistics tells us, that you can reduce the precision by the square root of the number of measurements you take. This is statistical at this point in time. But supposing you have a random error of x, if you take 3 measurements of the same random error, you can reduce it by random error over square root of 3, which is about half. As you increase the number of sensors, obviously you reduce your error, but obviously your bound goes up. So there's a trade-off there. We're working with 3 sensors now only because our idea is to kind of put a triangle. So you have one here, one here, one here. That way you have a 360 view as well. Because as you know, emissions event with wind, I was hoping to show you the video, they can go all over the place. And wind is a huge factor. So by having a 360 view, we're able to kind of pick up where these sensors are. Also, if sensors fail, if one sensor fails, we still have 2 sensors to work with. If there are, with hardware design, so again, there's noise spikes. We don't know if outliers in your data are either due to noise spikes or because of actual emissions events. But again, by having 3 sensors to work with and 3 data points, you can figure out if these are noise spikes or the actual outliers. So that's something we're working on right now, and that pretty much, I don't know what we have next. This is the shadier sensor he's got here. Yeah.
Has any work been done anywhere to correlate the level of pollution in particular terms ground level?
Yes.
Which say the levels at 20 feet. The reason I ask is because the one thing they potentially lower, so your maintenance related, repeated cleaning, calibration, and all that will go down. Secondly, because typically pollution events are related to high temperatures, fire, smoke, whatever else that gas going down. That hot air is going to rise again. So you can actually correlate what's happening at ground level with something that's relatively cleaner. You may be able to reduce the number of intrusions on these sensors. Just not absolutely.
Actually, the beauty of these sensors is that they're highly portable. These logic sensors are about 40-50 kgs. They require RCC structures, trained lab technicians, trained labs and labs, because these are gravimetric sensors that require chemical analyses. Or TM is more electromagnetic fields and things like that. But that's exactly right. So deployment design is an important part. So if you're trying to do roadway emissions, and roadway emissions is a huge area, I think. You can actually start to place these sensors at different heights, and by looking at different distances as well. So by looking at different heights and different distances, you can actually start to map emissions events in your area. I won't mention the name, but IIT Madras, there's this guy, Cambridge, all of that, who loves his maths. He's looking at localized. So again, back to applications. All sensor data is great, but how do you actually use the data in meaningful ways? So it doesn't have to be air quality, water quality data as a primary data set. They can be very useful as secondary data sets. So to explain that, he's looking at localizing traffic, because he believes global traffic modeling leads to a lot of standing traffic. Because normally these traffic models are all globalized. Standing traffic is a major contributor of PM, particulate matter. So his point is, if you can show me at standing traffic, literally based on traffic lights, how much more contribution there is from PM, it'll become a very useful thing for me to go to the pollution control board or anyone else and say, standing traffic is not only going to contribute more, it also leads to apparently $2 billion in loss of revenue because of lost productivity. Literally waiting at traffic across India costs us $2 billion, is bigger. It allows him then to say standing traffic should also be reduced because it contributes to PM. So if you can give me a data set that shows this, then I will be able to use that for my own optimization of traffic. So the point is, I think we should start looking at secondary data sets as well. Not just as using air quality and water quality is that. That's pretty much it, but essentially that's what we're trying to do. It's still in the R&D stage with lots of data. And those are the wonderful sensors that we have that we're using, the Shinei sensors. They've got 2 versions, the 16 and the 42. And finally, really quickly, the approach which I think I've described, please move on. I think that really talks about just a recap of what we're trying to do. We're very early stages. Again, Benefit has this wonderful idea of using schools, working with schools to actually deploy the networks. That way you deflate the cost of the sensors, and then you start to, and they help with the maintenance as well. And finally, to your sensor drift, we're trying to do something called auto-calibration, where you have something called a sensing factor. So if you're the reference sensor, I'm the primary sensor that needs to be calibrated. I don't know how these guys have come up with it, but essentially, based on your reading there, I can tell what my reading should be based on wind dispersion and other factors. So then I actually have my actual reading, and then what it should be, and then I can recalibrate based on that. That's the principle as well. We need to try that out. But calibration is a major issue, as you know, but 2-3 years is what's promised is when you need to recalibrate, depending on clean conditions. In India, given high pollution levels, I think it might need to be recalibrated quicker. The easiest way to clean these sensors is just use a high-spread nozzle in the exhaust and inlet valve, and the lens is cleaned off the dust. Because otherwise, if you have dust, then the valve is not there. Stop talking. Any questions, guys?
So one of the things that required for modeling is stability. So how do you take a sensing location and relate it to a source? Unless you have all the sources identified, none of these models work for you. You know what I'm saying? Especially in fugitive emission. You thought there are 6 sources and you model them all and you have a sensing location, say, 2 kilometers down the way. And there may be another source that you didn't know that is attracting that. So how do you relate your calculated value or measured value to the source?
Yeah, that's where
How do you identify
that's where the cloud source comes from. We expect to be in connection to future. You might have an event radars. Those are assumptions.
Right.
You might have, because there's gold, there's construction dust, there's all kinds of things happening at the same time. But the idea is that the local event will move away, will outweigh any other event. Because those are wind dispersion exponential increase as well. So we have an event taking place, say, 1 kilometer away. The actual contribution at the base of the sensing will be minor compared to the local emissions. That's the assumption.
And does your particle, I don't know if it's fine enough to give you any particle distribution, can you use a distribution of the particle size to tell whether it is from the thermal stack or if it is from a wood burning outside? Because there are different particles that come in the air. Has that been done? Or is that something you can do?
These are limitations of the sensor. So we can do PM 2.5, PM 10.
Right, that's just a long parameter.
Those are limitations. So what we're looking at, putting more sensors on board, we increase our levels. But again, obviously you have an example. We have the emission source. We're going to calibrate the So the idea is that based on the emission source, we calibrate for the emission source. So at least they calibrate for the emission source.
The reason I tell you is we have 3 stacks and the PM readings are all charged for all of a sudden one day. So I do stack sampling, there's nothing wrong with the boiler. There's a forest fire like 300 kilometers away in Montana. All our PM readings are gone for 10 days. You would think that forest fire somewhere in a different state would come and affect your reading, but depending on the wind pattern and the temperatures and the inversion you have, we had small for like weeks and everybody's looking at our plant. Nothing wrong with our boilers, but I mean during that time our ESP goes down. That's right. So it would be good to have enough resolution on some of these sensors and give you an indication of what the source is.
That is absolutely that.
So you're talking about calculating for a variety of inputs.
That would be
having an array which you can say this number is this.
That would be the gold standard. You will have to calibrate for your emission source. If it's thermal, if it's diesel, fuels, whatever, you have to calibrate all sensors. Ideally. There are lots of assumptions that are made in these optical sensors about particle size, and all kinds of things that do process.
Are we all in the
One question was the second data set that you were saying for using calibrating your sensors.
Yeah.
The secondary data set, or what we call as data proxies, is an approach that you will be used for our simulations, not for particles, but traffic or maybe even energy to some extent. There is an issue with combining data sets.
Oh, data fusion.
So,
Oh,
yeah, so data fusion is is one of the hardest problems, and like your best case scenario is the best data set. Let's say your worst data set decides like the best outcome that you can have. So, what are your thoughts on with respect to like if you are limited by what sort of data sets you have? So, you really think that you can use secondary data set methods to calibrate to such an extent? Because the sensors is the opposite of the problem we face. That is, you have lots of data to calibrate against. But for us, we are looking at like data collected by different methods, different people. Like even if the work needed, there are lots of issues with how the data was collected. So that's one of the greatest criticisms we face. So with respect to secondary data, the amount that you can achieve is sort of like limited.
Absolutely. That's probably we could solve that, then that would be absolutely great. Data fusion is exactly that. I mean, units are different. Often location information is different. All of those things are huge issues. We would have to obviously add noise sensors to our devices, because then you could correlate the amount of noise with the amount of traffic. You'd have to have an extra sensor. You'd have to have some kind of intermediary that could allow you to correlate your PM values with traffic. So it's not as simple as that. But the point is that I think we should also be thinking about using secondary data sets if we can. But that is a thorny issue. That's a thorny issue that even the EPA is grappling with, because their problem is, I didn't mention, I mean, supplementary monitoring is a huge area. So you have these monitoring stations, and then we add these other optical sensors, and they can supplementary. What we're doing is hotspot localization. Supplementary monitoring requires that, but that's not an answer. It's something we should talk about. Great.